I'd like to welcome our next speaker, Basem Mahmud, a postdoctoral researcher at and a Mary Sklodowska-Curie Fellow at the University of Granada, and a visiting researcher at the Migration Center at Koç University in Istanbul, where he's currently conducting research about refugees in the global economy. Welcome, Basem. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for organizing this event and for inviting me to participate today. I'm going to talk about legal status, but indeed this is part of my research about emotions, sociology of emotions. I did it in Berlin. I did interviews with Syrian refugees and asylum seekers. And I was interested in this question about their emotions. How do emotions interact with their feeling of belonging, understood as feeling at home in a place, in a certain place. In this contribution, I examined the role that legal status play in the decision that forced migrants do during their movement between different places and their strategies to construct feeling at home in the destination country. Legal status is one of the 4 dimensions necessary for asylum seekers to say, I can start a new life here, which I refer to as a new life hope in a place. The other 3 dimensions are dignity recognition, empathic emotions, and material satisfaction. Asylum seekers weigh all of their decisions and establish their relationship with places based on these 4 dimensions. As such, their relationship with a place providing them only with the affective elements. Affective elements are empathic emotions and dignity recognition. Its relationship with it will be temporary because they cannot remain there for a long time without the instrumental elements, legal status and material satisfaction. On the contrary, if a place provides only the instrumental, the relationship with it will be rational conditional, meaning they will stay because it seems to be the best option for the moment. Only when they find the affective and the instrumental in a place can a feeling of belonging develop. If they do not find any of this element, they will view this as non-place. I differentiate here between place and non-place. A place should provide hope, whether it's based only on the presence of the affective or the instrumental or both. Non-places are everything when we want just to go through it. We don't make real relationship with it. It's necessary to explain that I distinguish between escaping and migrating during the forced migration context. The difference between these 2 experiences is articulated in 3 dimensions: time, distance, and objective. In escaping, the individual believes that soon he will be able to go back to his home. It's time. He moves as close as possible to home, distance. His objective is to start a new life at home. There is no migration plan. In migrating, the individual believes that he will not be able to go back home, at least for the next few years. Any place becomes a possibility. Distance from home is not important in this way. His objective is to start a new life far from home. And therefore, he makes a migration plan. The affective dimension are mostly experienced through the social interaction that the forced migrant established in the place. In the case of the instrumental, the forced migrant obtained information even before starting the journey, which affect his migration decision-making. This information include waiting time, material aids during and after the application of the asylum, and the nature and the length of the legal status. This also includes the consequences of the legal status, whether they are allowed to bring their family member or not, and the bureaucratic procedures This shapes their decision on where to move or where to stay, whether Turkey, Sweden, Germany, Holland. Uh, Moreover, the same could be said about movement inside the country among different cities. They may choose the easiest or fastest province or city in granting the legal status. The moment when his application is accepted is critical because it's very important for his entire future. It's usually described as the essential moment of feeling relief, comfort, and happiness. Now, the asylum seeker becomes a refugee and takes a new step by starting to plan for his new life in the place. Of course, this is not the end. It's a long process that doesn't end until obtaining citizenship. With each step, the same feelings are repeated as a result of the increased stability, empowerment, and protection toward ending the uncertainty. Uncertainty which has accompanied him since losing home. As one participant reaction demonstrated, his employer said, "You received a letter. Maybe it's your residence permit." I went there, they gave me the residence permit. I went back to the restaurant. I sat there and I started crying. I said to myself, thank God. This is a very significant moment in the story of the forced migrant. Their legal status directly affects their engagement in what I call constructing home practices, by which I mean learning language, constructing familiarity with a new place, among others, like also maybe I would mention engaging in group activities, making life plans here, education, job, family, and citizenship. That is, legal status determines their access to many of these practices. An uncertain future not only causes psychological harm, but also negatively affects their relationship with the place. All of this raises questions about the public debate on migration, on integration, temporary protection, and the prospect of returning home when the situation improves in the home country. The question is not only whether refugees want to return or not, but there is a need for more reflection and insight into the impact of those declarations in the public discourse or from politicians or anything on the forced migrants' feeling of durable safety, and thus his constructing home practices. Should I construct a home if I should leave soon? Is not better to avoid a negative effect of losing home again by dealing with the new place as temporary and not making a great emotional investment in this place? Refugee and asylum seeker who I met mostly, this led me to question of integration. Refugee and asylum seeker who I met mostly prefer to talk about what integration is not. They don't define it, rather than defining integration. Even when they gave a specific definition, they quickly move to what is not. This avoidance of definition could be a kind of protest or resistance to the discourse about integration that fail to understand their everyday life, their challenges to construct feeling at home, their activity, what they do in their everyday life. For example, generally speaking, the forced migrant thinks as follows: I have studied the language, I found a job, I'm searching for one, or I'm studying. When I finish, I will go back home, go shopping, and from time to time, I will meet my friends or child. My life is like the life of any other person. What I should do more? In Germany, you will hear a lot like, okay, in Germany, Germans themselves, they are not very social. It's like individualistic society and everyone live separated. So what I can do when they ask me to integrate always about this. The research on integration should pay more attention to the everyday life of forced migrants, rather than searching for extreme cases of integration. Those who are either totally isolated or assimilated. In addition, more thought should be given to helping them establish more contacts with locals, rather than portraying them as people who seek to live in isolation or parallel community, which, while this may be true in instances where there is high perception of discrimination. The more significant problem is still the lack of knowledge and ability to establish such contacts. In personal or intimate sphere of integration, the use of the word refugee, this is another question also, I found it in Germany. The use of the word refugee become more significant when used to categorize forced migrants in personal or intimate sphere of interactions. It meaning create a sense of border maintenance or even discrimination that threats feeling of belonging. It seems that the use of the word refugee is tolerated in the economic or political sphere. Still, its use in intimate sphere may enhance the perception of exclusion or discrimination, while the forced migrants try to advance in his home constructing process. He wants to construct home and feel belonging, and not always to be in this place. As a result, many of them try to replace it with a new term. In Berlin, they organize something like newcomers. They speak about newcomer. We are not refugees, we are newcomers. This resonates with their view of integration. When I ask them, how do you understand integration? The answer revolved around two different fields, personal or tradition, value, religion, and the public, economic and political. Learning language, mutual recognition and respect, citizenship and political participation, having work and access, accepting the other. The first is non-negotiable, whereas the second is. Therefore, they may accept their second status of citizenship de facto, by which I mean having less political rights and taking jobs which locals do not like to do. However, they do not tolerate any transgression into their personal sphere due to this status. As one of them explained, I'm not a refugee everywhere and all the time. I'm also a colleague, friend, guest, and so on. Thus, conquering this sphere in the name of integration is met with a strong defensive reaction, which may interrupt the home building process. Integration and temporary residence permit or protection for the refugees seems to be contradiction if we consider the view of forced migrants. Home building is a process requiring a hard time and great emotional immersion and investment in the new place. That is seen as a place capable of providing the possibility of starting a new life. If the feeling of home is essential for integration, then reminding refugees that their visit may end soon may negatively affect their engagement in practices of constructing home, as well as their well-being in the place. As my research showed, when analyzing differences between asylum seeker and refugees, this is the most important things which appear, this effect of this legal status. All of this indicates that need to a review of the actual migration policy and its procedure in dealing with refugees. Do we want them to integrate, or we want them to stay here for a small time and then they go back home? This affect all their emotion and all their feeling of belonging and practices in their everyday life. The finding point out the need to shorten waiting time, but also to extend the duration of the residency permit. We should expect more feeling of stability, safety, welcome, and more engagement in constructing home practices with a permanent residence than with a one-year temporary protection. Aside from the issue of time limitation on geographical movement seems to negatively affect people's capacity to deploy. Those participants who were obligated to remain in a small village or a place where they felt that they were not welcome considered this time of their life to be lost, since they were unable to advance toward the home building process due to restriction of movement inside the destination country. Therefore, it's also necessary to consider the possibility of facilitating their movement as early as possible, which positively affect their well-being and engagement in constructing home practices. If I still have some time, I just want to put some alternatives that it's come from the refugee. I think all of them will agree, or most of them, the majority of them. Migration policy toward the recognition of asylum seekers may contribute to enhancing feeling of injustice, especially those related to border control, forcing people to risk their life. This doesn't mean opening the border. Most refugees demonstrate an understanding of the challenges that such a decision entails. Based on their view, I would say that we can put this as important things to do, taking more seriously those procedures which guarantee that those who are getting asylum deserve it, strengthen security in the host country, and the forced migrant safety during the movement. Considering the various levels of forced migrants' professional skills, expertise, or education in planning for integration, coordinating refugee distribution among European countries, always considering the family reunification, giving more attention to unaccompanied minors, encouraging the use of words like newcomers as opposed to refugee, designing a way to encourage interaction between refugees and locals and avoiding the formation of ghettos, improving the level condition in the camps, reducing waiting times, especially after applying for asylum or family reunification, fighting discrimination earnestly. With this, I finish my intervention, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think we have a few questions for you. Let me first start with a question that was asked on our social media page. What can individuals in our community do to assist the integration of refugees? If we're talking more about a day-to-day individual, or even on a greater scale, what can you tell us about that?
Sorry, what again? I didn't hear.
What can individuals in community do to assist in the integration process of refugees?
I think I talked about this when the most important thing for me is people, when they arrive here, they really don't know how to establish contact. It's different culture. Even if you do a joke, no, it's hard to do a joke. You cannot. I focus in these small things in the social interaction. So I found it very important to try to make this connection between locals and organize and this context. They don't know how. The problem in Germany, they say, one of those who I interviewed, he said, I really want to know people, what I can do. I stop them in the street and I want to talk with you. And so what most important things we should do, I think, is to try to establish this context with locals.
Amazing, thank you. I think we have a question from one of our team members.
Wait, should I go now?
Yeah, there's no questions at the moment.
Okay. There you go. Tifa has a question, but let me just ask my question first. So thank you again for the great talk, and it was really interesting, especially for myself. I mean, I'm like, I actually do like sometimes like emotion research and that kind of thing too, as a psychologist, and I feel like a lot of people are not familiar with what Marie Curie Fellowship is, but like it's a super cool fellowship. Like the fact that he has it, like a really, really cool thing. And so my question is kind of related to that. So I see like some of our volunteers here who are actually themselves interested in going to academia, and some of them actually are interested in doing research on like refugees or like migration issue, etc. So I wanted to hear a little bit about like how you actually ended up in your place, meaning like, how you actually came to your research interest, or like how it's connected to your personal life or anything basically, so that people can learn a little bit about how you actually got there.
Okay, thank you. Yes, exactly. Like studying migration, usually they study it with structural approach. No, they focus in you see a lot of surveys, and they study like structure, economic, and this is, and emotions. It's usually when they study emotions or forced migrant emotions or refugee emotions, They studied it with therapeutic approach, usually from psychology. No, they feel like the trauma, but emotions allow us also emotion it play a very important role in our decision and all of our interaction in the place. So I was interested in this, in studying refugee and asylum seekers' emotions because it affects their life and their decisions. But from the sociological perspective, not with trauma and not with robotic, because there's a lot of study about this, and because also because always we find this kind of study, refugees are usually presented as traumatized people, and this doesn't help their integration. Who want to employ people with trauma, or even it affects even their everyday life with friends. And so I found that it's very important to work about sociology of emotion, to study the experiences of forced migration, and to listen to their story and their their subjectivity in this process. So yes, I did this, and in Germany, and I started with when I finished, I applied for Manipuri, because now I'm doing something here in Istanbul, and I try to connect this research between Berlin and here to modify this theory which I made when I was doing research in Berlin. I mean, like, there is continue in this process.
Thank you very much.
That was a really, really good answer. Thank you so much. We actually have 3 more questions. So I'm going to ask Tifa first to pose this question for you. Tifa, can you hear me?
Oh. Yes, hi.
Yes, hi.
I was just listening, and I was, while I was listening, I was thinking of the point that you mentioned, that there is a difference between escaping and migrating, and based on 3 main points. So I don't know, but the thing that I was thinking of, like, can, during the period of migration, this migration turn into escaping?
Okay, what I would say is that when you start in building home, it's really usually refugee will say in Germany, what we met in Germany, they will say even the situation in Syria become very good. I don't want to. I did a lot of things here, and now I established maybe I have work, I study, and established my life here, and this process of building a home, it's very strong. I mean, very hard. So when they advance in it, it's mostly they will continue. They will say, I don't want to go back to Syria and start from zero. This is the most things you will hear when you talk about the damage. So in Turkey, maybe the situation is different. But why? Because I would say that in Germany, they have the instrumental elements, which I call legal status and economic situation, economic material satisfaction. And also they find this kind of in Berlin, I speak, the affective elements. In Turkey, the most important thing is the instrumental. I mean, the material satisfaction and the legal status. It's for this reason, I would say that mostly they will always, you will find that they will consider it's like not the final place for them.
Right. Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another question. Let's ask Erdem. Erdem, can you please pose your question? Can you hear us, Erdem?
Yes, can you hear?
Yes.
Okay, hello, Basem. Yeah, he's like my colleague also from Berlin, and so we know each other. And I would like to ask you, I assume you would also have some participants like who first came to Turkey and then maybe afterwards to Germany. And I know for this secondary way of migration is also kind of under discussion in Germany. And because, for example, first they come to Turkey, in any way they were in the secure country, and then from Turkey to Germany, they are not refugee anymore. And I know there are such discussions are going on, and I just kind of wonder if among your participants, and if it was also under discussion, like comparing the situation in Turkey and in Germany in terms of feeling of home. Because I could also imagine there's a kind of cultural proximity, you know, and I know among my friends, like they were saying, actually, I was feeling more like home in Turkey, but on the other hand, they were still kind of economical problems and exploitation in the labor market and so on. And that's why they wanted to come to Germany and so on. So I was just kind of wondering how you kind of compare the situation in Turkey and Germany from the perspectives of your participants. Thank you.
Exactly, thank you, Hamdi. Yes, this is what happened. It's usually when you speak with them about Turkey, they do a lot of comparison between different countries. They were in Turkey, others they were in Jordan, in Lebanon. So, for example, in the Arab country, there's a lot of, I would say that's Lebanon, for example. They speak about, mostly they speak about it like there is no instrumental element, and also they didn't find the affective element because there's a lot of discrimination, you know, this story about the political situation. But in Turkey, usually they mention exploitation in work. This is always. But the affective sides, in many cases, for me, it was, they were happy with it. I mean, because of this similarity in the culture, and because maybe there is a lot of, it's near Syrians, there is a lot, for example, who comes from Gaziantep, there is a lot of Syrian. I feel they feel that, yes, this, the affective side, it's what they attract them to Turkey. For this reason, I would say that it will still temporary relationship between because the problem for them always appears in the economic question, exploitation in labor market. This is the main point which they mention always when they speak about Turkey. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that was our last question. Thank you so much, Basem. Thank you for joining us today and for sharing your experience and your knowledge with us.
Thank you.